This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on the NEGOTIATEx podcast. We are continuing our conversation with Nicole Posner, a communication and conflict expert. If you haven't already checked out part A of the show, be sure to do that first. Let's jump into the conversation with Nicole.
In your book, you talk about 3 different archetypes that influence leadership communication: people pleasers, warriors, and freshers. Could you say a little bit about what each of these are and how they show up in our conversations? And going back to this idea of awareness and self-reflection, why self-reflection on our prevalent archetype may be a useful practice?
Absolutely. So first of all, I'd just like to sort of add to that I think there's a little bit of each archetype in all of us, and it depends on the situation that we find ourselves in. So, I am a fully fledged people pleaser, hand up, but I can also be a warrior and not so much a fresher. But anyway, I am a people pleaser. And there are many situations where that does not serve me well. I don't like saying no. Sometimes I don't have boundaries. Sometimes I don't, I accept work when I know I really shouldn't because I don't want to upset somebody. And if you're in a leadership role, the consequences of that are, far more impactful than, say for me, because they impact a team, for example. So a people pleaser, let's say, would have difficulty saying, to a team member, no, you can't take tomorrow afternoon off. Right. And if they're always used to hearing yes from their boss, that's going to come as, quite a shock. What do you mean I can't take tomorrow off? And not having boundaries, for example. A people pleaser doesn't like boundaries in friendship. They want everyone to like them. So, they're friendly, too friendly. They might go out for a drink after work, for example, but they've crossed a line. So people think that they're a mate and not the relationships change, the expectation of it. Right. So when suddenly you need to put your foot down and be a boss, they're like, whoa, what's changed in our relationship? Well, nothing's changed. I'm just being a boss, So that's a people pleaser. I've done loads of mediations over the years which have been because a manager has been a people pleaser and they haven't been able to be honest. So they end up, getting themselves into a lot of hot water. They can't manage strong personalities. But an example of this was a mediation I did a few years ago where there was a manager who had to manage one employee who had a very difficult communication style. She was quite abrupt and quite blunt in how she said things, which caused conflict with another colleague, in fact, her own manager. So the boss, if you like, who was the people pleaser, had to step in and manage her in the interim. And she was never honest. She never said, you need to be careful how you say that, or this is how you've been experienced. Anyway, in the mediation, it came up. She was very blunt in the mediation, and the manager, who I was managing her initially, said, well, you see, that's why Sally hates managing you, because of the way you are. And suddenly this whole thing erupted because Sally had never been honest with, I can't remember her name now. And, that suddenly opened a can of worms because she couldn't actually sit there and say, you couldn't be direct and honest. So that's a few issues that come up with people pleasers. They're sort of afraid to speak up and say what they think in meetings. So people never actually take them seriously or never give them an opportunity because they never show their true colors. So That's a people please. Then we have the freshers. The freshers are the new managers who are often promoted into a new role without the training, and that, you know, in itself creates problems. Or even, as I said before, a business owner who's never managed people before. Right. You know, they're inexperienced, they're unsure of themselves. They've been very good at the job they were in before, but people management is a new role. So, you know, they don't know.
I know another role that, you know, that you talk about is the untested assumptions and competing expectations, and how this has a conflict within teams. I was hoping you could also share an example about that and how that may have contributed to unnecessary conflict, and how what might have been able to go differently to handle that situation better.
With assumptions, managing assumptions. There's an expression, which again, I'll try to say it delicately. Assumptions are the mother of all. Bleep, bleep. And, you know, assumptions are very dangerous. You know, we have in a meeting, for example, an untested assumption will be in a conversation, you'll be talking about one point on an agenda, and suddenly something else comes into the conversation, and you've never finished discussing the previous point, and suddenly the conversation moves on, and you were talking about speaking to a client, following up with a client about something. Anyway, a week or two goes by and your colleague says to you, did you speak to the client about that? And they're like, no, I thought you were. And they were like, no, you said you were. But the point was, there was no, you know, there was an assumption because nobody actually confirmed that, in fact, who would take responsibility for it. So there are, you know, that's an obvious one. Then there is, you know, that sort of, I thought you were doing it. That's the one we just said. But it's really important when you're any conversation, whether it's with your teams. I talk about the expression, sorry, I'm just collecting myself here.
No problem.
We talk about, as an example, I was just trying to think of. So let's say you're doing a feedback or performance conversation, and you finish the meeting and you say, has everyone understood? And they'll go, yeah, you're all fine. And then you go away and they clearly haven't understood. So what I always say to leaders or bosses is, well, instead of asking them if they've understood, you actually ask them what they've understood, so that clarifies that missed assumption, you know, that they have all understood, to kind of replay back or reframe back exactly what they've understood. So it's about clarifying at the end of the day.
I like that. So in Nolan, and I would say from our military time, right, it wasn't just do you understand the direction, right? Actually having them brief back to you what you've understood, what they've understood.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really powerful. Part 2 of your book is about, you call it the cure. Mm-hmm. And you say it starts with us. And you've alluded to some of this already. But when you say it starts with us, you're talking about our mindset, our responses, our preparation. So what can we do, both emotionally and physically, to set ourselves up better to manage these difficult conversations?
Okay, well, I have a little acronym. I like acronyms. And I talk about using...
You're in good company, Nicole.
So does Aram and I.
Oh, great. Acronym, team acronym, yeah. I think they're great ways to remember things. So I talk about using a map, which, you know, gives you direction. But also a map is an acronym for manage your mindset, know what you want to achieve, and plan and prepare. So when you think about a difficult conversation, the most important thing, I think, is actually what you think about it, mind, how you launch into it, how you approach it. But if your mindset is this is going to be a difficult conversation, the chances are it probably will be. And there's a great quote by Henry Ford: if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And this is, your mindset is, if I think I can't do it, I probably won't be able to do it. So managing how you think about the conversation beforehand is very critical. Then know what you want to achieve. You've always got to have a goal. You've got to know, what do you want from this? Do you want an apology? Do you want understanding? Do you want change? Do you want I don't know, whatever we want from the conversation? But you've got to know what it is you're aiming for, and then plan, prepare. And that sounds really obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't. They just launch in, and that's when conversations go off track and they escalate and conflict happens. So knowing but preparing well is important.
And I find it interesting, given how you defined difficult conversations as talking about things that matter, things that are important to us, right? That there's this tendency not to manage our mindset or not be clear on what we're trying to achieve, or even more surprising, to not prepare, to not plan for how you're going to have this discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, but again, it's when we're in that fear place, or that place of discomfort, we don't want to have to think about those things. We just want to, either we retreat or we go for it. It's one or the other. And sometimes we don't have that pause to think, I need to do, how best am I going to achieve what I want? Difficult conversation is like anything in life that is difficult. If you were, going into a board meeting or any conversation, any situation, you'd never walk in there unprepared. Or a new client meeting, you wouldn't go in there unprepared. You would know what you were going in there to say. And it's the same concept. We call it a difficult conversation, but it is something you need to think about, prepare yourself for, and prepare for. And there are lots of ways to do it. Managing your mindset. A lot of people ask me, well, how do I do that? What does that even, how do you manage your mindset? How do you get into that zone? And I often talk about, anything that will shift how you're thinking into a positive space. So go for a walk around the block, listen to a great podcast, listen to some great music. I know one client who actually used to get on his Harley Davidson and sort of ride down the open road, with the wind in his hair.
Love it.
Just to clear your head and get your mind shifting. But a trick that I always suggest, which I think is, really helpful, is to have six tracks of music that you have to hand, that you save on your phone or wherever you want. 3 that can help calm you down, so that when you're feeling quite anxious or angry, they'll bring you down, and you can always access. And the same is, if you are feeling a bit nervous and you need to build up your confidence, so 3 tracks that really yes, I feel good about life. And you can always access them just before that conversation or that meeting. That's a really, really good trick, actually, just to have, easy to tap into.
Can we ask what's on your tracks?
Yeah.
What your tracks are?
So calming ones are Fleetwood Mac. There's a song called, and I don't know why I ever chose these tracks, actually. So one of mine is called Sarah, Fleetwood Mac. The other one is, it's actually an Italian song, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was actually a song that was actually played by, there were four Italian singers, but it's the song called, I think it's called Somewhere. I think that's what it's called. And then there was, I can't remember the last one. So there's 3 for that. And then there's for my uplifting ones, it's This Is Me. Then, which was from the soundtrack of The Greatest Showman. The other one is, I can't actually remember them. There's one more, which was, I'll come back to you on them. But I can't, I've got them on my list. But
No, that's great. I love that. Love that. You also have this beautiful quote that says, honesty, courage, and authenticity are a pipeline for a connection rather than a barrier to communication. And you use that to introduce what you consider to be the key ingredients for successful leadership communication. Your first tool is curiosity. So I was hoping you could share this great acronym and framework around getting curious and why it's so critical.
Curiosity is one of my favorite tools in a number of situations. And it can be used in so many different ways. So, for example, if you want investment into an idea and you want to commit, people to sign up to, a new way of thinking, if you ask them to give their opinion or input into something, rather than tell them this is what's happening, they feel more committed to the process. So being curious has many helpful uses. But the way I actually use curiosity and the acronym is, first of all, the C equals clarify, the U is understand, the R is reframe, the I is investigate, the O is observe, and the U unearth, and S support. So they each have a different use. So clarify, as we talked about before, is assumptions. We all know how difficult they can make a situation. So never assume anything, but always clarify points and make sure that, responsibilities, actions, and timelines are clear. Understanding. Now, a mistake that, say, freshers make is they'll go into fix something quickly without actually understanding all the facts. So they'll deal with an outcome of the situation. They'll deal with a mistake, they'll deal with errors or unmet targets, but they won't actually deal with, the source of the problem. So understand it. Don't go to fix and solve, go to understanding. Reframe. So if a team member says, I can't do this, so you could change that to, well, I can't do this yet. Help them reframe how they think about that. The I is investigate. So don't take things at face value. If 2 people come to you with a complaint, make sure you really, you investigate it properly, so that you don't jump to make a judgment call. You actually, make sure that you completely get where they're at. There's this, again, if you're a fresher, you just want to impress your boss and you want a quick fix, so make sure you investigate properly. The O is observe. What am I observing here? Look at body language. Look at how people are behaving in a certain situation. Don't just listen to what comes out their mouth. Then the U is unearth. What's driving this behavior? What's driving this attitude? What's actually underneath? Unearth it, dig it up. Because again, often we just look at what we're presented with. So we need to dig down. And then the S is support. When you have all this information, how can I support you further?
Nicole, difficult conversations clearly extract a toll on relationship. How do you advise leaders to more effectively nurture and build relationships with others before conflict arises? And you talk a little bit about about listening as well. And I'm just wondering if listening is part of that kind of list of things that you advise. But what's your advice when it comes to kind of being aware of the relationship component and the toll it can take?
Yeah, relationship building is so important. And I think it's something that a lot of leaders miss, if I'm honest with you. And this can be, when you're okay, I'll rewind that. When you build relationships, when you need to then manage conflict or a difficult conversation, people know that you're coming from a place of integrity and good intention rather than, just as a, I'm a boss and I'm coming in to, tell you off. So there are ways to build connection in relationships, getting to know people, finding out what their interests, hobbies are, because that mutual connection, mutual interest triggers sparks of connection with people. And that's where, building those relationships helps to support times when tricky times that you have to have those difficult conversations. And it's like the situation, if you have, you take a piece of advice, you have a situation where two people give you the same piece of advice. One is from someone you know well, and one is from someone you don't particularly like or respect. You're going to listen to the advice from the person that you actually know well, because they know that you're coming from a place of well-meaning and, in good intent.
And I think that, kind of elaborating on this is like so much of this is around the process by which we as leaders manage conversations, be they with internal teammates or external clients. So, what do you see as the key traits leaders display in these conversations?
I have another acronym, which I talk about, communicating with heart. So humility, empathy, authenticity, respect, and transparency. And I think that, each trait brings something important to a communication, humility, taking responsibility, taking ownership when things go wrong, empathy, empathy is one of my really important key traits as well, I think, in leadership. That connection of I get it, I understand where you're at with this, how can I support you? Authenticity, people see through smoke mirrors. They can see when your communication is off. And, they know when something isn't quite right and off kilter. So, show up, warts and all, who you really are. And, there's nothing wrong with showing who you really are. It actually creates connection. Respect, no conversation should ever take place without mutual respect. And transparency, people want to know. People want to see it, to know information, particularly like during the pandemic. People wanted to know what was going on. They wanted you to be honest and to share. If the business was in trouble, let's hear it and hear the truth about it, and deal with that afterwards. But when people don't get transparency, it creates mistrust, and that's when they start wondering what else is they're not being truthful about.
At the heart of your acronym just now, and the one you said was most important, that was my little play on words, by the way. I didn't get the laughter response out of that. Is empathy.
Yeah.
Do you ever hear from somebody, I don't feel like I'm a very empathetic person? If you get that, can we build our empathy, or is empathy something I either have or don't have when it comes to, human connection, particularly in difficult conversations?
I think some people naturally have empathy. EQ, I think some people have it. Can you teach it? Can you learn it? I think if you're quite an intuitive and open person, you can. But some people definitely have it as a natural, I say gift, but a natural attribute is probably a better way of using it. Intuition as well, I think.
You work all over the globe. Do you have any advice around when there's language differences or cultural differences that exist in trying to manage these different conversations? And maybe it's because we are from different countries or regions. Maybe it's just for different companies or even different business units within the same company. How do we practice these concepts in those instances?
Well, I think again, it comes back to awareness, and also the experience of how is this being received by, let's take cultural differences as an example. So much is lost in translation. The way something is said in one culture is completely misinterpreted in another. So, that's quite a good example. And certainly when I work in businesses who have global, offices in different countries, I always say to them, just because you know what you're saying doesn't mean that other person understands it in the same way. So having a bit of perspective and putting yourself in someone else's shoes, certainly in a cultural situation, is really critical. And then, working in, different departments, again, we did allude to it before about, having the sort of foresight to think that, we don't know exactly what's going on for the other person. Don't make an assumption. Let's start those conversations. If we don't know what's going on, let's check in. Because I think there is too much reliance on, assuming we know what the other person is thinking or doing.
You're a parent and a spouse. Do these concepts apply at home? Maybe it's a disagreement with the partner or spouse around work-life conflicts, or maybe it's just with the grandchild. How have you been able to practice all of this in your personal life?
As I said to you before, I'm a work in progress, so, and human. But, just a couple of things really, when you're a blended family, there are so many different scenarios that you have to think. For example, when the new family all came together, perspective and experience, what we thought was, going to be the right way forward. Actually, we have to accept that what someone else's or the kid's perspective was very different. Our intention for what we wanted wasn't, what they wanted at the time. So being aware of that, blended families, I understand is a big source of conflict. There's always been a joke in my house, with my three boys growing up, whenever there was a difficulty with them. I've got twin boys, the older boys are twins. It was always, call the mediator, bring her in, let's ask her opinion. So it's, again, it's about having the conversation, not being scared to have a conversation. Let's not brush things aside. Let's bring everything, be open and honest, and bring things out onto the table and talk and talk. Because unless we have those honest conversations, things don't get sorted. They just, as we said before, they just build up and get worse. So, I think that I've learned the power of the pause as well, to sleep on things, don't jump in. And, my four greatest tools that we, of course, have touched on are curiosity, empathy, listening, and relationships. And just remember that, stepping up now and having that difficult conversation now might be uncomfortable, but it's going to be far more uncomfortable if you leave it, and far more, torturous to deal with afterwards. So don't make avoidance a choice action, step in and have that conversation. And once it's all done and dusted, you can breathe.
You mentioned being mediator. Do you prefer being the mediator between two parties to conflict, or is it easier to be one of the parties involved in the conflict?
Definitely easier to be the mediator. Definitely. For sure.
As we get ready to wrap up, Nicole, I'd just like to take us back to the title of your book, and breathe. maybe ask you to share with our listeners any final thoughts or even a challenge for putting these things into practice in their most difficult conversations.
I think I go back to the point I just made. Don't be afraid to have those conversations. From the years I've been doing this, the fear behind it, if you can recognize that fear, that is your biggest asset, actually. Because, as I said, if you don't have the conversation, nothing's going to change. I always see conflict as an opportunity I'll rephrase that. A lot of people see conflict as a negative. I see conflict as a positive. Yeah. It's an opportunity for change, not challenge. And if you change your mindset to it, this is an opportunity for good things to come from this, rather than it being, a real awful experience. Yeah, it might be uncomfortable to go through it, but it's an opportunity for change. And I think that's how a difficult conversation should be viewed. Thank you for that.
I can appreciate that perspective, right? That it's an opportunity. And if I had a takeaway from so many good notes here, I would say you're kind of the map piece, managing that mindset, as well as being clear on what I'm trying to achieve and having a plan and preparing well, allows us maybe to lean into conflict, as you're indicating, embrace it, because it doesn't feel like it's going to disappear. It's going to be present. What we do with it really matters. So
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for your insights. Thanks for joining us today.
Great chat. Thank you both.
Yep. Thanks, Nicole. And this is a podcast that's all about elevating your influence through purposeful negotiations. Nicole definitely helped us do that today. So thank you again, Nicole. If you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to NEGOTIATEx.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.